Hi everyone, I'm Parker Gutierrez, and welcome to the Mates Radio Show with my co-hosts.
Ryan.
And Ryan.
And today we'll be tackling the Christmas truce. Brian Breen, would you like to
In the
start us off?
trenches. What were the Christmas truces? So, the Christmas truce of 1914 was when, in the midst of World War I, the war stopped temporarily for a couple of days. The main two countries involved were Germany and Great Britain, but other countries such as Russia, France, and Austria-Hungary were also involved. This truce started during the early hours of Christmas Eve, when the British heard Christmas carols being sung by the Germans across the war zone. The British soon joined them in singing the carols, and when the Germans heard this, they decided to meet up with the British halfway through the battlefield to greet them. What happened next still confuses people to this day. The two main enemies sang together, drank together, and smoked together. And possibly the craziest aspect is that the soldiers broke out into a game of football, or soccer, which the score and legitimacy is highly debated, but in the most popular variation, the Germans won 2-1, but other versions say that the Germans might have won 3-2, and some historians say that this never happened due to the state of the field, but most people believe it did. But throughout the entire 2-day span of this, the opposing sides were very respectful to each other, and since the war was originally supposed to be over by Christmas, it's nice that the soldiers didn't have to worry about war during the holidays.
Happy holiday.
Alright, so Lang, go to you.
The Christmas truce took place around Christmas Day of 1914. This temporary pause in fighting was suggested by Pope Benedict XV. Although the countries at war refused to cease fire, the trench soldiers decided to declare their own unofficial truce, and now we pass it back to Parker.
The question is, how frequent were the Christmas truces? Well, they happened on and around the Christmas Day of 1914, 5 months after the outbreak of the war in Europe. These ceasefires were never repeated though. They were attempted, but failed due to officer threats. So, now you may wonder, why were the Christmas truces important? Well, the Christmas truce was important because it showed humanity during a time of war and violence. The truce brought together the Germans and the British, even though they were complete enemies at the time, which made the whole event very odd and interesting because it showed the power of the Christmas spirit. On top of this, the brief ceasefire enabled many soldiers to collect and bury the dead bodies of their combatants. Not only was this respectful, but it prevented diseases and such from spreading to both sides because of the presence of the dead bodies. This truce also allowed for gifts and such to be exchanged within the soldiers, the most important of these being personal gifts from the soldiers' families. These gifts had letters and treats to help the soldiers cope with not spending the holiday with their families. The treats were usually plum pudding, cigars, chocolate, and salami, depending on if the soldier was German, Austrian, or British. While the Christmas truce was unofficial at certain points, it showed that war could not stop the peacefulness of the Christmas holiday.
Next, I'm gonna go over how some people didn't like these truces. So, first is the leadership. So, the military leadership of all sides were completely terrified, and they completely hated what was going on. And when the Pope at the time, which is Benedict XV, when he proposed the idea originally, they declined. So when it happened anyway, they were petrified. Another thing is that during the midst of the truce, there were still deaths that happened. A German sniper shot and killed a British soldier named Percy Huggins, and then another soldier went to defend Percy, and he was killed as well. And then the third person that opposed this was actually Adolf Hitler, and he was quoted as saying that such a thing should not happen in wartime. Have you no German sense of honor left? Which, as we know, he went on to cause mass genocide. And then, finally, for the facts. This truce wasn't very widespread throughout the war. By most accounts, like the fighting still went on in most areas, and only only 100,000 men were actually involved, of which 700 million men were involved in World War I throughout the span. So it wasn't a very large amount of people at all. So yeah, now we're gonna go on to a quiz. Let's go!
Really
Quiz time!
It's the quiz. Number 1. Whose idea was it originally to create a ceasefire for Christmas? You have 10 seconds to think of your answer. Alright, if you said Benedict XV, then you were right. Number 2. What countries were involved in this Christmas truce? There are 5 total countries. Alright, the countries were Germany, Great Britain, Russia, France, and Austria-Hungary. Number 3. Why did the British start singing Christmas carols? The British started singing Christmas carols because the Germans started singing first. Number 4. True or false? Another ceasefire took place 5 months later between Austria-Hungary and Russia. So this is actually false. Last but not least, number 5. True or false? A German soldier, Percy Huggins, was shot during the ceasefire by a British sniper. Alright, this answer is also false. Percy Huggins was actually a British soldier that was shot by a German sniper. Thank you for participating in the quiz. I hope you did well.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of History Homework. I'm Ryan.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Parker.
Have a great week. Hope to see you next week.
Goodbye.